Hello friends, I hope this finds you well. Welcome back to another in my What's the Royal Marines Really Like series. I've been really looking forward to doing this for quite some time now because I'm going to talk about Norway, which, looking back at least, was an experience I'm just so glad I went through. If maybe I wasn't so happy at the time, for reasons I'll explain. So Norway is where the Royal Marines do their Arctic warfare training. Before I talk though, could I please ask you to hit the subscribe button, folks, and drop the video a like if of course you do like it. That obviously just helps me to keep doing what I'm doing. Thank you. Now I got some notes here, so excuse me if I'm looking at you and then looking down at my notes. It's either that or I have to go cross-eyed. I first sort of came across the actual Norway experience as opposed to just hearing about it when I was on Rio Party at 4-2 Commando. So I left training in February, bitterly cold when we did our commando tests, and I went to 4-2 Commando, which is at Bickley, just outside Plymouth, and I was on something called Rio Party, which is basically guard duty. The reason being, the whole unit were away on deployment, winter deployment or exercise, and this was of course in Norway, where the Marines, where 4-2 Commando and 4-5 Commando go every year. At least that's how it was when I served. So I rocked up there as a keen new Marine, wondering what the hell it's all about with this thing called a green beret on my head. You know, 19 years old. I would say I was wondering what I was letting myself in for, but it never really felt like that. It's a bit like going to school on your first day, that sort of feeling. But of course there was nobody there because they're all away in Norway. And so, cut a long story short, we did the Rio Party on a very empty camp. Felt very strange just falling in every morning just to be told to go away again. You know, there was nothing for us to do. We did 1 day guard duty and then maybe had 3 days off. It was quite strange. We'd go for the odd sort of PT run, but it was all so relaxed compared to what we were used to being at Lympstone doing our commando training for 8 months. It was like, why aren't we getting told what to do? Why isn't there a strict program? Why don't we have a minute to ourselves? It's almost the complete opposite. And I've said in my other videos, so feel free to check out first year in a commando unit, how it, at quite a lot of the time, it was just too relaxed. There was nothing to do, with the exception of times like Norway. So all these guys were away, all these old sweats as you call them when you're a young lad, and they came back. And when the lads come back from Norway, it's quite interesting because the coaches all turn up. So they've flown from Gardermoen Airport in Norway, landed at Bryce Norton, and then you jump onto coaches and they'll bring you back down to Plymouth. And the first thing that you notice about these roughy toughy Marines is they're all wearing t-shirts. So it's a bitterly cold March in the UK, and these guys are all just walking around with t-shirts on. And they always used to explain it as, it's so much colder in Norway and you get so used to living in the Arctic for 3 months that when you come back to an English winter, it's just not even cold. The other thing is, it's a strange feeling watching all these trained Marines pile their kit off these coaches. There's Siemens kit bags, those big long sausage shaped things. There's suitcases. There's the bergens, obviously. We didn't get issued bergens in training. That's a newer thing. We were allowed to buy them for our final exercise, but to see the lads, obviously all these bergens that have been issued to them, their weapons, the weapons have been camouflaged out with white plastic tape to simulate snow. And yeah, it was kind of like, wow, the guys are back. What experiences have they had? And then almost literally like that, all of that kit, so tents, vehicles, all the bergens, skis, all this kind of stuff, within half an hour, it's all gone. Why is it all gone? Why is it all packed away? I think you can guess. Everyone wants to get home. That's it. As soon as you get back, it's ditch your kit and then you get shore leave. So there's people going back to see their family, obviously they haven't seen for 3 months, and lads just cannot wait to get downtown and get on a beer. And yeah, so all that kit's packed away quickly. Well, I had to go on active service before Norway because I was in the Northern Ireland conflict. So I spent 4.5, 5 months in Northern Ireland, you know, fighting the IRA, I suppose you'd say. Well, it certainly seemed so at the time. And so I didn't get to go to Norway for another whole year. And you got to remember, like, I'd never been out the country at this point. I think I might have been to Magaluf. Is that Mallorca, isn't it? I think I might have been to Mallorca on a lad's holiday. But that was the only time I'd really been abroad. And now I'm getting on an RAF. I think it was a TriStar that we flew out on. It might have been a Hercules. If it's a Hercules, it's funny. They give you earplugs and you all just line out in the back of this empty Hercules, looking at the guy across from you for whatever the flight is to Norway. I'm guessing it's about a 3-hour flight, isn't it? So yeah. You get off the plane, you've got all your kit packed. You take an awful lot of kit with you because it's not just your civilian clothes, it's not just your military clothes, but it's all your specialist Arctic equipment. And on top of that, you've got to have smart clothing as well, which just seems really weird looking back that you actually take the time to pack your stone shirt, so a stone like this, but obviously military style, to look a bit smart. And the reason for that is if you go on ship during your time in Norway, usually in the middle of an exercise, you go onto one of the aircraft carriers, and then you've got to dress up for dinner. Sounds a bit strange, doesn't it? But Marines pride themselves on their hygiene. So, yes, that was the other thing I was going to say about the lads coming back from Norway is none of them wear headwear. When you're in Norway, you wear a foraging cap, which is just like a baseball cap, but it's got camouflage on it. And it's got a little flap you can pull down over your ears just to give them the tiniest bit of protection that sometimes you need up there in Norway just to prevent them from getting frostbite. When you're skiing along, you don't always need your bigger hat. You get this big hat. It's like the deputy dog hat. Do you know the one I'm saying? So it's fur lined and you've got the things you can pull down over your ears and tie it underneath. You've got to keep that hat at hand in Norway because you never know when a blizzard might come in. And when a blizzard comes in and you've got I don't know, 80 mile an hour wind, you're going to die pretty quickly if you can't get your warm kit. But yeah, so all the lads are coming back and it's like sod wearing berries. They haven't worn them for 3 months and certainly no one on the camp is going to tell them, oi, why haven't you got your green beret on, right? And that's another thing that, as a young Royal Marine who was a recruit, a few days ago, you're just trying to get your head around. So you don't always have to wear a beret. Oh, okay, because at Lympstone you always wear headwear. If you get caught without that, the only time you don't wear it is when you're doing physical activities. So yeah. So where are we? My Norway came around, as I said. So we've flown out to Gardermoen Airport on these Hercules. You then get onto buses and you go up into the mountains in Norway. So you head north. Before that, you have collected your kit. So while you're back on camp for 2 Commando, you collect some of your kit from your troop quartermaster. I think I've got the terminology here right. It was a long time ago for me, remember. But that's your TQ. Sorry, your TQ is your company quartermaster. Then you've got your QM, which is your unit quartermaster. And you get various bits of kit from each one. But amongst those bits of kit are your boots. So you get your ski boots. They've got this weird square toe on them that fits into the ski. Talk more about that later. In fact, no, I'll talk about it now. So you've got your skis. They call them Pusser's planks, which is a piss take, right? But the actual truth is they're really good skis. I mean, you wouldn't want to wear them in a cross-country race, although we do in our own races, because the Norwegian and Scandinavian and Alpine racing skis they're about that thick. They're literally about less than an inch wide. Extremely lightweight carbon fibre, and it's kind of different. The Marines just want a solid, workable ski that's going to do the job, and they actually do. They're not bad. They're not bad skis at all. So I won't bother explaining the technology of how your boot fits into the binding on the ski. You can Google that, but all you really need to know as far as cross-country skiing goes is it's only the toe of your foot that clips in. The reason being, when you ski, you need to lift your heel, push the ski forward, your heel's back down, and then you ski along. Or it's toe, push the ski, heel down, slide, toe, push the ski, heel down, slide. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, tough luck. Because you either don't need to know, or you're going to find out for yourself if you end up doing your Arctic warfare training, or AWT as it's referred to. One of the good things about going to Norway is you get issued these Arctic socks. So whereas you normally get green socks, and they do the job, they're a bit naff, but they're okay. You get these Arctic socks and they're really comfortable, they're really warm, and the lads like them so much they will wear them anywhere around the world. So I knew Marines that wore their white, obviously, their white Arctic socks all the way through Iraq. Yeah, and these socks get so old. You see them going around in the tumble dryers on camp, and what starts off as a nice big thick chunky comfortable sock ends up with this flimsy little rag. And the lads still insist on wearing them, and they wear them when they go downtown, and they wear them when they go home. It's probably changed a bit now, but yeah. On the subject of wearing kit home, we'd always wear these Helly Hansen tops. So these Helly Hansen kind of fleece body warmer things, right? And it's always the thing when you go to Norway that the old sweats are going to tell you that you don't get bought the right kit or enough of the right kit or a high enough spec of kit by the government. So lads invest in their own stuff. The main things people invested in the main things people invested in for Norway were Gore-Tex socks, which we didn't get issued, Gore-Tex gaiters. Some guys got a more expensive Gore-Tex gaiter than the regular canvas ones that we were issued, although I just had the regular canvas ones, and I think like a lot of people they were fine. Although if you've never had anything better, you don't really know what fine is, do you? So these Helly Hansen jackets, like these fleeces, like I said, you're expected to just wear your woolly pulley, your green pullover, itchy thing. Guys would buy their own sleeping bags, because even though the military sleeping bags are really warm, they're polyester, so they're really quite heavy. A military sleeping bag weighs about, it's something in the region of 2 kilos, the ones we had anyway. And we were actually the first year to trial these new sleeping bags, and they were really warm. They were no complaints whatsoever. They had big pockets inside that you could tuck your wet kit, because in Norway you always sleep with your wet stuff on your body, not directly on the skin obviously, but tucked between your clothing and the sleeping bag to dry it out overnight. Again, it's a lifesaver, right? You're talking life and death up there in Norway. Certainly if you're in a combat situation where you don't have the resources to just jump on a wagon and go back to your base if anything goes wrong. And the other thing guys would invest in was their own cooker. And they didn't have these multi-fuel stoves like we have now, these whisper light things, and these lightweight kind of MSR stoves. Back then they had what was called the peak cooker, which was the kind of forerunner of all the modern multi-fuel stoves. And the peak was just famous for being difficult to light. I think the reason the lads used it used the same fuel as, we call it naphtha, which is a military grade fuel you can use inside tents, and it doesn't give you carbon monoxide poisoning, or at least that's what they told us. But this peak cooker, the infamous joke was in Norway, you saw them burning, covered in fuel, totally burning, being thrown out of the tent, or thrown out of the tent sheets as we had back then, before it set fire to everything in them. And a good few sleeping bags were scorched. And later on, when we actually had tents, a good few tents got big holes in them because of this peak cooker that the lads used to buy for themselves. So the tent sheet thing was, originally in the old days in Norway, you got your own little section of tent sheet. It was like I think it was a pentagram shaped. The idea being every man in the section has one of these pentagrams, and so it doesn't matter how many people you are, you can put the pentagrams together and build this mini yurt, which is essentially what the tent sheets were. It was a heavy, thick, Second World War type of canvas, and you tied it up to trees with, you put them in the forest and you tied them up to trees, or I'm guessing you could put them up with using your ski poles if there weren't any trees available. The problem was they got icy and cold, and they weighed a ton, which isn't a problem if you were carrying one each. But what we did at the early stage of my Norway, before we swapped to tents, is you would keep these tent sheets all together, because it just took too long taking them all apart every single morning when you're stressed enough in the morning and time's limited as it is, and sometimes you get very little sleep. permanently exhausted, always hungry. It just took too much time taking them apart. So one guy would either volunteer or be nominated to carry everybody's tent sheets. And to give you an idea of weight, your bergen was a good, anything up to 80 pounds, and the tent sheet in itself was like another 50 pounds. I'm trying not to exaggerate, but I don't think I am. It really was heavy, and I'm going to hold my hand up and say I'm so glad I never had to carry it. I was, as I think I keep saying, I was about 10 stone when I joined the Marines. So I'm probably about 10.5 stone in my unit. I'm really kind of nothing. And this thing weighs half as much as I do. Well, so yeah. And like I say, fortunately, we moved to tents. We were the first winter to trial 5-man tents. And that was a lot better because somebody took the poles, somebody took the ground sheet, somebody took the fly sheet, somebody took the pegs. And that was it. It was a lot more lightweight, a lot more modern, obviously. Right, going back to our equipment, you get windproofs. So as opposed to just regular camouflage, you get windproof camouflage. And boy, do you need it. You get this windproof jacket with this massive hood. And you always got to keep the hood ready for emergency deployment. Because if a blizzard comes in, you've got to be able to just pull you just tie a simple bow so you can just pull it and then flap the hood. It comes right over your face. I talked about the hats, ski whites. They're your camouflage, so they're just whites, and they're like this silk jacket and silk pajamas. I mean, they really are. And it goes completely over all the rest of your kit. And it's almost feels like parachute silk. Very, very thin material. And it's quite funny. It can get quite mucky and dirty towards the end of an exercise. A gollock. I believe I'm using the right name. If someone can put it in the... can someone put in the comments if it was called a gollock? I'm sure it was. It's like a Bowie knife, and everyone gets a gollock. And to be honest, you don't really use it. I never used it in Norway. There was nothing to use it for. I guess if you went to war in Norway, you certainly would. Why do you go to war in Norway? What's the idea behind this training? Well, back then, we were enemies with Russia. Alleged enemies. It's all a game, obviously. Russia pretended they had all these nuclear weapons, which in hindsight, when you look back at the news, you now realise were just cardboard cutouts paraded on the back of trucks. But we were all so thick back then, we just believed everything we saw on the news. So we believed Russia was our enemy and they're all going to, nuke us in our beds. And then we said we had all these nuclear warheads and we could launch at Russia, and you're never really quite going to know the truth, are you? Yeah, we did look after certain weaponry on ship, but like I'm no expert, I couldn't tell you the physics of how that weapon was actually put together. But I'm digressing. My point was, you go to Norway to protect NATO's northern flank. So NATO's all the countries that are bound together by the North Atlantic Treaty, which is just another instrument of the ruling elite to play the world off against each other. Again, another story. And what happens is you're expecting. What happened was you had this threat that Russia would come in through Scandinavia and through Finland, and then down into Europe, and then they'd kill us all in our beds, snog us, and then chop us all up. Might not have been in that order. So yeah, so these gollocks, right, these knives, what I heard is every year when the lads come back from Norway, there's something called clean-up party. So these guys get volunteered. Pinged is the word in the Marines. If someone volunteers you for something, it's called pinging you. It's normally to get you a job you don't like. Although I heard a lot of the lads like being pinged to go on the clean-up party, because what they would do during the days, they would travel around the exercise areas in Norway where the unit has just been, and they would clean everything up, which included taking a shovel and shoveling up all the shit from the people that didn't want to shit in the Elsen, which is your communal toilet. Sometimes there wasn't an Elsen. I mean, you can only have an Elsen if you've got a vehicle to put it on, right? So if you're out with your troop, there isn't an Elsen, so you just dig a hole. And this cleaning party would go out after the unit came home, and they would dig up all this shit. And apparently they would find loads of these gollocks that people had, you know, dropped from their equipment. So yeah, the gollock. Put the real name in the comments. You got bivvy bag. Not only did you have a tent, but you had a bivvy bag as well. And that was quite good because that gave you double protection should you get separated from your tent. Because believe it or not, one of the exercises we did, or one of the practices we did, was we slept out for the night in just our sleeping bag and our bivvy bag. Which, funny enough, I did years later in Antarctica, and that was fine as well. But yeah, you wouldn't think you could just sleep in a sleeping bag and a bivvy bag out in the open in the Norwegian winter, but you can. I talked about the skis. 2 sizes of skis. There was 180s, I think, and 210s. And my size, kind of short ass, you got the 180s. And that was really quite good because the shorter the ski, the more control you have over it. The longer the ski, the better glide you get, obviously. But for your first Norway, you want a shorter ski. It's just easier to control. So I was quite pleased that I was short for once. And then you get ski wax. You get a scraper to scrape off your ski wax. You get a cork to rub on your ski wax. And there's about 5 types of ski wax. There's probably a lot more, but the one you mainly use 3. One is a really sticky one for when the snow's wet, so when it's warm and your skis don't get much grip, because it's pretty much like trying to get grip in a, you know, I wouldn't say a puddle, but you know what I mean, when the snow's really got that much water in it. And you put on this, I think it's called Clister. It's a really sticky wax. When it's just normal conditions, we would use, I think it was a green or a blue. Blue was a slightly colder wax. I think red was normal. Again, somebody who knows, put it in the comments. But it really made a difference, and you had to get it right. Yeah, you had to get it right, because if you can't grip, and it's only the underneath your foot that grips, you grip, you go forward, and when you lift your foot, the ski curves. So that ski foot part comes up, and then you glide on the ends of the skis. And so underneath your foot, you need the right, just the right amount of grip. So you've got to get your wax right, depending on what temperature is. Yeah. And then the quartermaster, he threw us these lip balms, you know, the lip gloss protection shit that you wear when you go skiing or whatever. And he said, "This is for the Wendy's." Wendy's meaning the pussies, right? It wasn't true. It's like, you need that in Norway. Your lips all start cracking from the cold. So yeah, there we were. We've arrived in Norway. We've hopped on a coach, and he's flying along the roads, this driver, towards our mountain lodge, you can say. We stayed in a mountain. It's basically a mountain walkers hotel in a place called Jendesheim. I've put some pictures in. And in the summer, it's for people that are enjoying the beautiful nature. And in winter, it's for skiers who want to go out ski touring. But this particular lodge rented itself out to the military, so it was guaranteed to be booked out every single year, and the military probably paid a fortune for it, right? And this driver's just flying along these roads. They're completely covered in snow. They're marked out with bamboo poles just so you can see where the road is, because the snow is so deep. And you're thinking, how can he drive so fast? Why is he not sliding off the road? And of course it's because they've got little spikes on their tyres in these cold countries, and you can drive pretty much like normal so long as you don't overcook it, which I've done. I did once. That's not fun, coming down a Norwegian mountain when you lose control of a minivan and you've got 12 people in the back. I didn't lose control of it, but I did for a minute or so. Yeah, that's another story. So we're driving through the Norwegian countryside, and it's amazing. It's just utterly beautiful. You're driving through these deep forested valleys. All the trees are covered in snow. All the lakes are frozen. The rivers are kind of half frozen, and they've got icicles dangling off the banks of the rivers. There's these bridges everywhere that look like that bridge in Rambo First Blood. You know, the one at the beginning. All these kind of bridge structures like you don't really see in the UK. And of course, it's just snow everywhere. I mean, proper snow, the likes of which I hadn't seen since I was a kid. So yeah, it's all quite exciting, really. You arrive at your hotel. You all get issued a room. So I shared with a lad called Al, who's just got hold of me through me doing these videos, funny enough. So Al and I were in this tiny little room, and just that in itself was amazing. If you hadn't really been on a ski holiday before, not that this was a ski holiday, but it's that similar, you know, your first time in the mountains, whether that's the Alps or obviously we're in Norway, it's just all so different. The culture is different. Everything's set up different. The buildings, even though it's bitterly cold outside, the buildings are all so much warmer than your house back home. You know, English houses are better now, but now we've got all this mandatory insulation. But when I grew up, I'm sure a lot of people will relate to this, it's just bloody freezing in your house. Your heating got turned off at night, that was guaranteed. And sometimes we used to get dressed by a 2-bar fire. I'm guessing some people don't even know what that is. You had these electric fires, and you had a 1-bar and a 2-bar. I think, you know, you put it on in the morning and you'd huddle around it, and you'd get your school uniform on because it was so cold and you couldn't afford to put the central heating on. But at least that was my my experience. And there we are in Norway, where it should be freezing, and you're almost sweating because this accommodation is so warm. This little kind of pine cabin, you each get a little pine room in this kind of annex from the main hotel. It's like a log cabin, like a pine cabin. So yeah, it's all quite novel, is what I'm trying to say. On the first night, you got a ski room where you go and put your skis, and there's guys in there, and they're all ironing their skis. And I know what you're thinking, what? But yeah, they're ironing the base wax onto their skis. And what it is some of these guys that it's their third winter, fourth winter, fifth, sixth. Some of these guys have been to Norway like 12 years in a row. They love this stuff, you know. They've got their own, they might have their own skis to use at the weekend. And they've got all the right equipment for ironing the base wax onto their skis and everything. And it's, I guess what I'm trying to say, it's all just so new. You're just trying to take all this in. Our first evening, we had a briefing held by one of the Marines. So this is an informal Kangaroo Court type affair, which basically consisted of the lads in our company that had been to Norway before, but one winter, falling everybody else in, all the junior ranks, all us Marines, no corporals, and basically laying it on the line that if they caught anyone thieving, then they would break their fucking fingers. And, you know, it's fine, isn't it? If you're not a thief, you obviously haven't got to worry about getting your fingers broken. But it's you wouldn't get that in a normal workplace, would you? You go to work at Tesco's and the manager gets you in on the first day, or your fellow shelf stackers get you in and go, right, if we catch you nicking our gear, we're going to break your fingers. So yeah, that was quite a pertinent memory. And it does happen, sadly, it does happen. And it's usually this thing that it's not that someone wants to be a thief, although you do get a thief, and it's really strange. Because Marines are like, you know, they're supposed to be a team, and most of the lads at least work to that ethos, even if they might be complete dickheads, you know. But occasionally you get that person who's got the illness, like the kleptomania, sort of, like, yeah. I mean, I'm saying illness because it's quite bad, isn't it, to steal off your friends? But it does happen. And a friend of mine, Mark Time, some of you will know that name, wrote a book called Going Commando. And in it, he talked about how they thought they had a thief in his troop in training, and they're all looking at each other, blaming each other. Oh, is it you? Is it you? And training is quite a stressful environment anyway, right? Fucking turns out it's one of the training team was going around the recruits' lockers and stealing all their money out of it. And when this guy got exposed, and again, feel free, I read Mark's book ages ago, but feel free if I'm getting this wrong to make a comment. But when the guy was exposed, he went and drove his car into a lamppost, you know, at 80 mile an hour. Anyway, let's get back to Norway. So your routine in Norway is during the week, you're out training in the snow. If you're a novice, you do AWT, Arctic... No. Again, fellas, somebody put it in the comments, correct me. As a novice, you study under an MSI, a military ski instructor. That is one of the lads who's been out to Norway before, really enjoys it, is good at the skiing, and they put their hand up and they volunteer to go back to Norway early before the unit get there, and they do a whole military ski course learning how to teach people to ski. So we had a chap called Eric, very nice man. He's now a major, and he was my corporal back then. Or at least he came to be my corporal. But in the beginning, he was my military ski instructor. And he's taking all the troops novices, of which there's about, in a troop of 30 odd people, 35 people, you're going to have about 15 novices, something like that. And it's AWT, Arctic Warfare Training. I'm not sure if that's the basic part though. Doesn't really matter, I'm just trying to get the grey cells working, so if someone can remind me. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is, the first part of your Norway as a novice, you're not with your company, you're not with the rest of the guys, you're with the novices, basically learning how to ski and living in the field. So that will be your daily ski training, then you go back to your accommodation. Occasionally you have an exercise out, but it'll only be, say, a maximum of 3 nights. And you'll learn how to put up your tent sheet, or in the early days we had tent sheets. You will learn how to cook inside the tent. You get this little cooker, runs on a fuel called naphtha, which is I think what Americans would call Coleman gas, you know, the white petrol. And you can cook, like I say, in the tent. These cookers, they're little brass affairs, and in order to get the pressure up in them, you have to get a little bit of hexamin block, put it on top of the cooker and light the hexamin. So hexamin is like a fire lighter, right? You put the hexamin on, you light it, and it burns away for, let's say, 2-3 minutes, and that puts pressure in the system. Then you can turn your cooker on and light it. And once you got it going, they were really good cookers. It was just a pain if you woke up in the middle of the night and you fancied a cup of tea. You had to quietly get your cooker out in your tent, go through all your bergen, try and find all your cooking stuff, which is why obviously discipline is a real important factor in the Marines non-stop, but certainly in Norway. You've got to know where all your kit is at all times, be so tidy. Some of the tents I went in over there, or at least one, was so tidy in that tent. The corporal ran such a strict routine. It was tidier than any house or room you'd see back home. You'd learn all how to cook your Arctic rations. So you had rations for regular warfare, and then you had rations for the Arctic. And the rations for the Arctic were always more favourable because the meals were much nicer. You're burning anything up to, let's say, 5,000 calories a day. It's a lot. I mean, you're skiing along for a start. You've got an 80-pound pack on. You might be skiing all day long. You burn a lot of calories. And these ration packs, they had these little extra luxuries in. The meals were better. Mainly they were kind of, what you did before you go to Norway, so you didn't have to use mess tins and all that rubbish. You went down to market, you bought yourself a non-stick frying pan, a non-stick saucepan, and you chopped the handle off it, so you didn't have a handle like that sticking out your bergen. You just left enough handle to hold, or you got a pair of those grippers so you could pick your pot up. The non-stick then is so you don't have to spend so much time cleaning it. You can just wipe it out with a bit of snow. A wooden spoon, so you're not making any noise. So tactically you're good. But to be honest, I saw guys just get normal spoons out. They didn't really care. I mean, it is an exercise after all, right? Yeah, and then you take extra herbs and spices to Norway, because even after a time, the novelty of having Arctic rations, it wears off, and you start feeling pleased then that you took curry powder and garlic powder, and you smuggled maybe an onion from the kitchen out into the field, or you've got an apple in your bag. You can have some fresh fruit, right? And the things I remember about the Arctic ration packs were that they had windproof matches. So they had these little matches, or normal matches, but they were twice as thick as normal matches, so they wouldn't snap easily. And they had so much sulfur and gunpowder on that when you lit them, it was like lighting a mini Roman candle or something. They went, and they're called windproof matches for that reason. I never met one single Marine in all the 3 months I was in Norway that used a windproof match. I'm guessing they're more for emergency when, if you're going down with hypothermia or frostbite, you've got to be able to get a light quickly if you're in a survival situation, and those matches would be perfect for that. The other thing I remember is you got a Yorkie bar. You got this Yorkie, and I think it actually tasted like Yorkie, as opposed to the Rolos that you got in the ordinary ration packs that were made in Egypt or some Arabic country, and they tasted like your mum's cooking chocolate, like just not quite right. And I think you got a little pack of Wrigley's chewing gum as well in the Arctic rations. Again, fellas, if you can remember what was in there, write it below, because I'm going to chuckle remembering some of those things. So yeah, that's your basic novice training, okay? Your company, meantime, they're out doing regular exercises, so you don't see them during the week. You only see them at the weekends when they come back out of the field and you come back to this hotel at Yendesheim, right? Yendesheim for our company, obviously there's several, there's 2 units in Norway. There's 4-5 Commando and 4-2 Commando, right? And in each unit there's 3 companies, although I believe it's 4 companies now, isn't it, since the wars in the Middle East? And you're all spread. Each company has its own hotel. So I was Lima company, laid back Lima, as they said, which just means absolutely fucking shit. It's just a stupid name because it's absolutely no different, with the possible exception of Zulu company, who have their own in-house culture because they've got their name Zulu. That I think just every company in the Marines is pretty much going to be the same as another one. Although obviously if you're in 40 Commando, those companies in 40 go to the jungle and not the Arctic. Yeah, so when you come back out the field and you're there in your hotel at the weekends, I wish I could explain that feeling. To be in the sheer luxury of a Norwegian hotel. They have these luxurious duvets, more like eider downs, I think you call, all like goose down or something, right? Or duck. And you got to remember, back then in England, we were still using blankets to keep warm at night. I mean, yes, duvets were just coming in, but we weren't long off, and in training we had to use blankets. None of this duvet stuff that you get now. This Norwegian hotel, you've got these lovely blankets. You're so tired. You're just exhausted from what you've done during the week. To go back to the hotel and relax is amazing. And the food, you're in a hotel, so your Marines chef gets the full use of the hotel kitchen, if I remember rightly, or you might even get a Norwegian chef, I can't remember, but the food was amazing. Every weekend you get brunch, so you don't have to get up at 8 in the morning. They do brunch around about 11 o'clock, and it's just, you've never looked forward to food so much in all your life, and you've never looked forward to just laying on a bed Did I get you? So yeah, anyway, I just loved being back in that hotel, and I'm going to be honest, I loved it far more than being out in the field. But yeah, here's the thing. What you had to avoid was getting pinged to go on a ski tour. We had a really keen OC, our commanding officer of our company was SBS, former SBS, or that was his specialist trade, and he was just a nutcase. A very nice man, very professional Marine, but if there was a mountain, he wanted to go up it. If there's a river, he wanted to cross it. If there was ski touring at the weekend, when you've already been out on your skis all week, he wanted to do it, and he wanted you to go with him, right? So it'd be like, right, we need a Marine to go with a boss to take him ski touring, and you're like, I'm not here. Don't pick me, for fuck's sake. You got the choice of having brunch and laying on your eider down and reading a book and having a nap, or going back into the mountains with the big boss, So here's the thing, right? We had a ski race. It was either the first weekend that I was in Norway or the second weekend. We had a ski race. Now, bear in mind, I've never done a winter before. I was getting quite good at the skiing quite quickly. And what I had done before... creaking a bit in this chair. Sorry if you're listening on iTunes. I've just deafened you. But what I had done is I'd been to my local dry ski slope, so one of these plastic slopes, and I taught myself how to downhill ski fairly well. I could go from the top of the slope to the bottom without even putting a turn in. Well, you put a turn to stop at the bottom, of course. Unless you want to go across the car park. I've seen Marines do that before. Yeah, that is funny. But, so yeah, I'd only ever done like the downhill cross country on plastic. Completely different to cross country skiing. But the cross country skiing I picked up quite quickly. And I think that was because I had done the downhill, if this makes sense. Anyway, this ski race, everyone was putting this wax on, let's just say a green. And I'm looking at the conditions and I'm thinking, nah, it's not green. I'm going to use green on the tips of my skis and red underneath my foot. And I knew what I was doing. We had this corporal, it was a lance jack, so one stripe lance corporal, right? He was a fucking knob. You remember I told you, you meet a lot of nice guys in the Marines, a lot of solid guys. You meet some fucking dickheads as well. And this guy, John Wayne was his nickname. He was the latter. Just a prick, And you can tell the pricks because they're cowards. You can see they're more worried about getting in trouble all the time than actually manning up and fucking doing the job and watching your back. These kind of people, you get them in all walks of life. It's not, and you especially get them in Civvy Street, right? But what it was, this guy just decided at the beginning of this deployment, I was going to be his whipping boy, right? Or at least that he thought he was going to try that. And he was in cahoots with my corporal. Now, my corporal was this old aging scouser. When I say aging, if you're in your 30s in a commando unit, you're quite an old person. And if you're still only a corporal when you're, say, 35, it's almost as if you haven't really progressed up the career ladder very... it kind of just means you weren't really you weren't striving for that promotion. I'm not trying to slag people off here or say that's a bad thing. Some people just didn't want promotion. But I ended up with this aging corporal, this angry scouser who had an alcohol problem. We all had alcohol problems in the Marines, right? We drank loads of the stuff. But this guy had a serious one. And off the back of it, he used to scoff pills. I used to see him in a tent in the morning taking these pills, and if you saw him, he'd go, "Oh, yeah, doctor says I've got to take these for my anger issues, right?" So he's on bloody Valium or something, and you know the effects of a come down off pills, right? So anyway, he was in the Falklands, and he was just this real angry old guy, and that wouldn't have been a problem except for the fact he was fucking hard as nails. So it wasn't like you could just steam in and just fucking knock him out. He'd just turn round like a bear and go, and then pummel the shit out of you, right? He was, and I saw him offer out the whole fucking troop one time. You know, you've got to have. I still thought about having a go, but you know, no one put their hand up to that one. I'll tell you that. You know, he was a big nasty bloke. So anyway, he's decided he doesn't like me. It's not that he didn't like me. He's a bully, and what do bullies do? They take their shit out on other people, don't they? And as we all know, this is just my life coaching bit now. What are bullies? Well, they're victims as well, aren't they? Victims of life, victims of their parents, victims of having the shit beaten out of them when they were kids. So this is not judgmental at all, and it's no hard feelings. But he didn't like me, and he was out to make my life a fucking misery. And I tell you what, on your first winter in Norway, where it's hard enough, you don't want some big old cunt bullying you, you know? And that's what I had. Then I had this young corporal. So the old guy, Bob Mitchell, it's not his real name, folks. The young guy, John Wayne, and them two are like that. You often saw this in the unit. You saw this a lot in the troop. In your section, there'd be one guy that was really pally-pally with a corporal, and that's fine, so long as they were pally-pally and they treated you with respect as fellow Marines, right? But it's when they were pally-pally and then they ganged up on you. You know, you're in a tent with 4 people and 2 of them are ganging up against you. It ain't nice, you know? And so I've got these 2 guys ganging up on me, and then comes the ski race. And I put on my wax. This Corporal John Wayne turns around. He saw me putting on the red or the blue or whatever it was, and he went, "What the fuck are you putting that on for? It's a green day today." And I just kind of, you know, I just ignored him, continued putting the wax on, went out on this ski race. It's about a 10k ski race round the local area. It's my first winter. I've never been on cross-country skis until this week, and I went out and I fucking nailed it. I was going so well. I was going to say I was going so fast, but if you've ever seen these Norwegians and Scandinavians, you're never going fast as a Brit. You're kind of going really, really slow. But what I mean is, I was overtaking everybody, and in a ski race, when you need to overtake, you shout track. So it's track. In Swedish, that's a Norwegian, that's spur. Spur means track, like spur from the animals, right? Spur is what you shout in Swedish, I know that. But in English, we say track. So you shout track at the guy in front of you, and he has to get out your way. It means that because you have ski tracks put in, right? You either have the ski tracks put in by a skier who goes first, or in Norway they've got machines that go out from these hotels and they'll put them in for you. That's so they attract tourists in the winter, right? I don't think we had that machine because we're just a bunch of like bootnecks, right? So the first guy goes out, put the tracks in, and that is your ski course then. 10k, I'm hammering it and I'm just shouting track, and the guy out in front of me is getting out of the way. And I was amazed. You set off at let's say 1 minute intervals, and I'm just overtaking old sweat after old sweat after old sweat. You're only wearing your PT kit, so you know, pair of Ron Hill bottoms, you know, tracksters, and maybe a Helly Hansen and a hat, obviously. But yeah, I just overtaking one person after another. And then who did I come up behind? Bob Mitchell. And I'm just shouting slightly louder than I had been. Track! And he stepped off the track, turned around, he went, his face just dropped, he went, huh, it's you. So this guy that he's been slagging off this first week, trying to make out I'm useless at everything, and I've just tracked him in the ski race. Then we got up to the top of this hill, and it was a downhill. And anyone who's used these Pusser's planks will tell you, it doesn't matter how good at skiing you are, the downhills are really hard. They're hard without a bergen on. They're nigh on impossible with a bergen. Hence why you learn things like sidestepping and the like. But this one downhill, I thought, I'm in for a penny, I'm in for a pound, I'm just going to go for it here. And I just tucked my ski poles under my arm like Eddie the Eagle. Just made the egg position and I bombed down this hill. And lo and behold, who was the, I'm going to say sentry then, but you know the guy, I mean, who's the guy, the marshal who's on this part of the course, making sure no one breaks their neck, of course. Or if they do, you know, they're going to call you an ambulance. The marshal on this particular corner was John Wayne. So I've just tracked his mate who doesn't like me. Now I'm coming up to John Wayne, who's trying to pretend he doesn't like me, but he does really. But he's got to pretend he doesn't like me because he's like that with this corporal, right? And I'm flying down this hill towards him. He's like, "Ooh, it's you." He went, "Be careful, it's ice, it's ice." And that was it. And I stepped off sideways as you do, made this corner, and the home stretch was across Yendesheim Lake. And I just put the power on as much as I could and just went balls out for the finish line. And lo and behold, when I checked my finish time, I come 7th out of the whole company. So it's the company in attached ranks, so 30 people in a troop. So over 100 people, and I come 7th in my first winter. Now, there's a reason I'm telling you this. Dun dun dun. Yeah. So, two things I'm going to say. This whole bullying thing, it's a fucking shame it goes on. And there's part of me that doesn't want to talk about it because I don't want people to get the wrong impression of the Royal Marines. You know I'm a pacifist. I don't agree with war. I think it's all constructed anyway. And I think if you go abroad and you kill other teenagers to make Tony Blair and George Bush and the Rothschilds even richer than they already are, you know, you're the one that has to come back and deal with all that PTSD and shit. You know, what I'm trying to say is I don't view war in the way I did when I was 18 years old. It was Muhammad Ali, I think, that said, if you've still got the same views when you're 50 years old as when you were 20, it's like, you ain't a man. Something like that. Naz gave me that quote. Thank you, Naz. But here's the thing. Bullying can ruin your life. I think I was quite lucky that I was quite stroppy. So you couldn't really bully me for very long, where I'd just punch you. And then you might beat me up, but that at least the bullying would stop, right? But I mention it because it fucking ruins people's lives, friends, you know. It really does in the military. It fucking drives people to suicide. Deep cut barracks. There were 3 recruits within a very short period of time, I think. Or 3 serving soldiers, I think. They shot themselves. And I think, again, someone can correct me, but I think bullying was behind that. You get certain corporals in the Marines and they get fucked off out of it because the bullying becomes almost pathological with them, like they're fucking psychos, you know. They're deep down, they're damaged people, and they're not nice people to be around. They can be quite intimidating and quite frightening. And if you're listening to this now and you're thinking about joining the Marines, you need to know all this, you know. You need to know all this. If you've had experience of this kind of thing before, I don't know if that makes you susceptible. Hopefully not. But do you want to put yourself in that all-male environment where everyone's trying to kind of like, not so much prove they're a man, but hold their own up against all these other big, tough guys, you know? And to give you an idea, you had some of these psychotypes were walking around the hotel where we were. Actually, it wasn't in the hotel. It was when I was on ship, but there was one of these guys. He had a pick helve. Your pick helve is the handle that you pick your pickaxe top on. So in Norway, you get given either a spade or a pickaxe. Again, it's too long ago for me to remember. But you either got one or the other, right? And this guy was walking around with a pick helve. It was on ship, actually, talking about how he was keeping the novices in order and how he was, you know, he'd smashed a couple over the head already. You know, this is kind of, I hope it's not like that in the military now, well, in the Marines. But this is what we had to contend with. And it was, you know, it's fucking considerable. Because that doesn't just put pressure on the person that's being picked on. It puts pressure on everyone else about, well, I don't want it to be me. So then I'll creep up to the bloke that's the bully. So do you get what I'm saying? And this guy, John Wayne, he'd made it quite clear in our company he was going to make the novices regret that they'd ever joined the Marines. I know it sounds shit, doesn't it? But I'm just being honest. You get one life, right? If you can't be honest in it, then you're a fucking coward. And if you're a coward, you're not living to your full potential, are you? And I'm not a coward. So I'm going to tell you the truth. It's just how it is. In fact, there's some things I wouldn't ever tell anybody, because I heard one thing in the Marines. It was quite alarming, but it was disputed whether it's true or not. And I wouldn't want to talk about that, if you know what I mean, because I wouldn't want to spread rumours where if something wasn't true in the first place. But you do get to see a few things. So anyway, that weekend after I've won the ski race, after I come 7th in the ski race, I'm lying on my bed at the weekend soaking up all this Norwegian luxury, and the troop officer came around. And our troop officer was a bit of a dimwit. He was a bit, you know, Tim nice but dim. And he wasn't really like your man's man. You got a few men's men officers, you know, they were like hard men. My troop officer in training like that, Jock Hutchinson, was he was one of them. Anything he expected you to do, he would do it first. But this guy wasn't really kind of that type of person. And he come round. He's a bit like the officer on Blackadder, isn't it? Is it George? That kind of Lieutenant George? Anyway, he's coming round and he's looking for people for the ski race against the army the next weekend. And he's coming down the corridor going, Marine Thrall, where's Marine Thrall? He's in the ski race next weekend, right? So they'd gone through the people that had done well in the company ski race, saw my name, and they're going to put me forward for this race at the weekend. And I'm on my bed there thinking, fuck that. I ain't doing that. I don't want to ski race at the weekend when I've got to ski all week long. So I kept quiet in my room, and as the troop officer walked down the corridor, this John Wayne character comes out of his room and goes, "No, sir, you don't want Thrall. He's fucking shit." Right? He's talking about the guy that's just come 7th in the ski race. This is just to show you get these shitheads, you know. And you don't want him. He's full of shit. Why don't you go for so-and-so, sir? And I'm behind the door of my room. Literally, I'm across the corridor from him going, "Yeah, go for so-and-so, sir. Please." And luckily he did. So I got off this ski race. It's really crazy because in hindsight, I love cross-country skiing. I'm not bad at it, and I've skied in competitions in Norway. Not at any kind of level. But looking back, there's a lot I would have made out of that Norway that I didn't at the time because I was so young. I was young, I was skinny, I was cold, I was tired all the time, I was naive, and I couldn't really just like, let's get into this and smash it like I would now, you know. So anyway, now moving on, I got given the LSW, so the machine gun, or the light support weapon, should I say. And I quickly learnt from the beginning that the biggest injuries that the lads were getting was their weapon. When they were skiing and they would fall over, the weapon would smash, the SE80 would smash you in the face. So what I did is I took a clip, a metal clip that I got off, I think it was like off my respirator or something like that, and I tied it to my weapon, and then I clipped it to the top of my bergen so it couldn't move. When I did the strap up then, it was fixed rigid across my chest, so for the whole of Norway I never had the weapon hit me in the face once, which was yeah, it meant you could ski a lot better, ski a lot faster, and take a few more risks. And if I come into contact with the enemy, I could just go literally just clip, unclip the LSW here, and flip the tripod legs out and go into action. So I'm just going to run through a few of the things we did. This is in no sort of particular order, but we did the snowcave. Snowcave, dig a snowcave, exactly as it sounds. You find a big bank of snow, you dig into it. You do it in a special way, so you only have a tiny, well, not a tiny, but a man-sized hole to crawl in. You pass all your kit in to someone who's in there. It's all been dug out inside, so you've got a sleeping area. You have a cold trench, so all the cold air, in theory, goes into that trench. Personally, I think it's not a crock of shit, but it just doesn't really work very well. You're still freezing in the snow cave. And you have a little shelf that you can put a candle on. And that candle will keep the temperature above 0. Allegedly. It really didn't feel like it. And you take a ski pole and you shove it up through the roof. And every sort of hour or 2 hours or so, you shake the ski pole just to keep your air hole open so you don't all suffocate. And that was really good fun to sleep in a snow cave, but really cold. Just one of those nights where you're shivering all night long. If anyone had a different experience, please, I'd be interested to know. We had an emergency shell scrape, not so much a shell scrape, but just a snow scrape, where we laid our sleeping bag out inside our bivvy bag and we just slept in the snow. And again, we dug a trench for us, and we dug a little trench alongside it that in theory the cold air would go down into. But how the hell that works when you're outside in the open air anyway, I'm not sure. Anyway, you do ski oaring, which is fun. Ski oaring is you get your ski poles and you take a loop around a rope, and then that rope is attached to the back of a BV, so a snow vehicle, and then the BV hammers off and it will pull yeah, it will pull at least two sections of people behind it. So 2 sections of Marines. So 8 on either side. You have a rope either side, and you just hold on. You put on your snow mask. The reason being because you're going at about 15 mile an hour, and the wind rushing past your face, or the air brushing past your face, is going to give you frostbite. So you put your snow mask on and you get pulled behind this vehicle. And it's quite funny. You don't want to be the prick that falls over. You just don't want to be the guy that falls over, because if you fall over, everyone behind has to either let go quickly, and I'm not even sure how easy it was to do that, or they just pile over the top of you. And the other thing is, so you're going up, up and down terrain, and you're just clinging on for dear life, making sure you're not the guy that falls over. And the other thing is, we went down a road, and we all started getting faster and faster and faster, all bearing in mind you don't want to be the guy that falls over. And we all skied up the back of each other, so we're all holding on. There's 8 guys all bumming each other, basically. Just to make sure you don't fall over. And when the BV pulls away, you all concertina back out again. So yeah, that's ski oaring. We did the ice breaking drills, where you cut a hole in the ice, you put your bergen on your back, you put skis on your feet, and you ski into that ice, and then you have to get yourself out there, chucking your bergen first. And you've got to use the picks on the end of the ski poles to pull yourself out. Otherwise, they'll pull you back in like they did to me. Because I'm light, I could just hop out. Pretty much just climb out of this icy water. But you're not supposed, you've got to demonstrate that you know how to get out, pulling yourself out with the ski poles, as you would if you really fell through ice on one of the lakes. I won't talk more about that now, but watch my video on it. I think it's a really good video about ice breaking drills. Then you get something called skins. Skins is interesting because in the old days, the Eskimos or the Inuits would put seal skin on the bottom of their skis, and then they could go uphill. In the Marines, you get a synthetic version. So you keep them in one of your webbing pooches. Don't know why we said pooches in the Marines. We never said pouches. It's a kangaroo has a pouch. Marines have pooches. If somebody knows, I'll be interested to know why. So you have these skins in one of your pooches. I had chest webbing, so I had the skins in one of them. And you whip them out and you put them on the bottom of your ski, and then you can go uphill. You can walk up really steep hills. And one time, we got to this mountain. We had to go up the side of this mountain, which led to a mountain plateau. And we all got our skins on, except for Mick, who decided he was going to leave his skins back at the accommodation because we'd never used them up until this point. And all of us just walked up this mountain fairly easily. I mean, it's always an effort when you've got an 80-pound pack on, right? Mick had to fishtail, which is like this. You fishtail so you can't slide back down, right? He had to fishtail all the way up this mountain. And then one mountain we climbed, we all lined out at the top and we were having a cup of tea, or a wet, as you call it in the Marines. And one of the skis, we'd stuck our skis in the snow, and one of the lads' skis just went straight off down the mountain, and the whole company watched as this ski went all the way back down the way that we just come. And this guy obviously had to then walk down or borrow a pair of skis and get all the way down and get it again, get his ski back. You got the Elson routine. So when you're in a harbour position, so your troop camp, if you've got an Elson with you, the toilet, they put it in the middle. And it's very relaxed situation. I think before you join the Marines, you probably would have thought twice about taking a shit in front of 30 people, but it's like they're all your brothers. Mind you, wouldn't take... Anyway, they're all your brothers, so you just do these things. You're just sat there in the morning, taking a dump, and there's all the lads skiing around you, you know, going to make their breakfast or whatever the situation, going to get breakfast if you've had... If you've got a chef with you, if you skied into like a unit position where they've got big tents up, you know, you're using the Larsson and everyone's just walking around you or skiing around you. It's quite funny. One guy, he'd taken a dump, but he hadn't realised, I think because he didn't want to sit on the Larsson seat because it's so cold, he's standing up a bit, and he'd taken a dump on the back of his ski, and nobody told him, and so it froze, and then he's skiing around all day with this turd on the back of his ski. 5-minute smoke break. You get these 5-minute smoke breaks. That's just a thing in the military, right, lads? 5 minutes smoke, and if you smoke, obviously you have a cigarette. If not, you sit down on your bergen and you just wait. But when you're waiting for orders to come back, and bear in mind you're skiing in a big company snake, so there's 100 of you skiing in a line, spread out over the distance of, I don't know, anything up to 5 kilometers maybe. It might be less, but you sometimes have to stop and wait for the orders to come back down the line to tell you just what the hell you're doing. So you sit down on your bergen, and these 5-minute smoke breaks can turn into hours. So, couple of stories there about this long snake. One time we're having this 5-minute smoke break, and when we all got up to ski off, there was an AWT lying in the snow, or lying up against a tree, leaning up against a tree, and it immediately, you know, your corporal's going to say, right lads, who's not got their weapon? Well, we all had our weapon, and it was at that point we realised this wasn't one of our section's weapon, wasn't even one of our troops' weapon. It was another troop's weapon, and we all got up and we're skiing back in this company snake, which, like I say, it just goes on as far as the eye can see, or it goes over the next mountain, or it goes through the next wood. And suddenly my mate Dan just comes skiing back down the company, down the whole company like a bat out of hell. And at that moment you realise who it was that's left their weapon, and you don't want to be the guy again. This is just one of these things you don't want to do. You don't want to be the guy that leaves your weapon. It's not a good idea. There's going to be a punishment at the end of it. There can even be a charge if people, if your, you know, troop sergeant wants to take it really seriously. Dan, luckily, he just got his weekend leave banned. We all went skiing that weekend and he wasn't allowed to go. He had to stay and wash up in the kitchen or something. But my mate Steve, very nice man, some of you might know him. Pinhead, bless him, dead now. Killed in a tragic motorbike accident. You might have heard me talk about that before. But Pim was telling me he was a BV driver in Norway. And one time they stopped for a smoke break, and he was armed with an SMG, so a submachine gun. And he said he put it down on the link where the cab of the BV, so the engine, joins the trailer. You know, the coupling in between. He said he just put his SMG down on there while they had the company had a break or whatever. He said, and when they mounted up and they drove off, he got about, let's just say, 5 kilometers on, and then he suddenly remembered, oh my God, what have I done with my SMG? SMG, submachine gun, right? And he thought, I left it outside. He stopped the vehicle, went around, and his machine gun was still lying on top of this coupling. But yeah, so talking about And one last dit I'll spin you about the company snake is, when I joined 4-2 Commando, there was a doctor, right? So this is a Navy guy that has been absconded to you, if that's the right word, or seconded to you. And this doctor is a green beret, right? And that's not unusual. The commando medics, they're called, right? So they're Royal Navy medics who've done the commando course, so they can go to a unit and they can work alongside the unit, because they've obviously done all the same arduous tests that you've done as a Marine. So we had this doc rock up at 4-2, and you soon get to know this is the new doctor. Okay, hello doc. And he might not be like a medical GP, that kind of level doc. Doc is a name you use in the military for anyone who's to do with medical. So he's like a, you know, an advanced first aider, I suppose you could say. And so here's the thing. He's out there in Norway with us. And he's been, you know, walking around camp wearing his green beret. Just, he's a commando, you know. People started to notice he was a bit of a dick. And by that I mean he was a bit soft, he was a bit of a dimwit. He was a harmless guy. I mean, I'm not saying anything nasty about him. He just something about him didn't seem commando material. Anyway, he soon got a name for himself when we did our Arctic warfare, our ski training, at being quite useless at everything. And still, nobody thought anything more of it other than the guy's a bit of a biff, right? So we're out there one day in our company snake, and the I can't remember how the message got passed back and forward, but the message, we stopped. We're doing the 5-minute smoke break thing. We're there for ages, and someone's like, you know, what's happening? The message comes back down the company snake saying, send for the doc, somebody's gone down, right? Going down means you've either got frostbite or you've got hypothermia. So for some reason, you're either not looking after yourself or you become ill, and you've stressed yourself too much and your body is physically collapsed. I never saw it happen to a Marine all the time I was in Norway. I saw people get frostbite, but I never saw anyone collapse. So this was quite alarming. You know, for a Marine to go down, it's probably this guy might die, right? So it's, send for the doc! Send for the doc! Send for the doc! This message goes down the snake. Then it comes back up. It is the doc! It is the doc! It is the doc! So it's the doc that's gone down. Don't ask me how that message worked, but that was the gist of it, right? Turns out this guy has rocked up at 4-2 as just a Navy medic. He's not a commando or anything. And because he's a bit, you know, a few tinnies short of a six-pack, he thought, because I'm with a commando unit, I have to go and get a green beret. So we went to the store and drew himself out a green beret. And, you know, the quartermaster's like not to know. So he's walking around camp with his beret on. And everyone's like, oh, you know, he's commando trained. And he got all the way to Norway, got out on exercise with us before anyone realised this guy hadn't even been through Limpston. So that was quite a funny story. And my final dit about the snake thing is this John Wayne character, right? Because what happened is my troop sergeant stepped in. He literally put his arm around me one day and he went, "Are you all right, Chris?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine, Sergeant. Why?" I mean, I wasn't. I'm in a tent getting the shit shredded out of me by these two fuckers, right? And you can't go and talk to anyone. You know, if you got the Padre there, you could probably go and talk to the Padre, but you wouldn't. it's not like you ain't got anyone, you just got to deal with it. That's it. You've got to deal with it. And this isn't a drip or a complaint. I'm just saying, I've got these two fuckers on my back and I'm dealing with it as best I can. But somebody had obviously noted that they were basically bullying me. And they'd gone and told the troop sergeant because they were looking out for my welfare like a proper brother, right? So the troop sergeant comes up, puts his arm around me as I think we're skiing along one day and went, "You all right, Chris?" I said, "Yes, Sergeant, I'm fine." He went, "Are you sure?" I went, "Yeah, I'm all right. I'm all right." I mean, you're just not going to say, you're not going to say, "No, I got these fucking idiots on my back." You just don't do that, right? And he went, "Listen, I'm putting you in Corporal Eric's section." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I wasn't going to argue, right? So the next thing, I'm changed section from this one where I'm getting all this strife and I'm putting this tent with Morty, I think I'm safe to say that name, and Eric, one other chap, can't remember his name, but anyway, I went from being in hell to being in paradise. These guys were all so nice. One of the guys was the actual, probably the equal hardest guy in the troop next to this Bob Mitchell character, right? And yeah, solid, really solidly hard guy. But the thing was, they were nice and they liked me, and we just got on like you'd think Marines would. And from that moment on, everything was so much easier. It was so much more fun. You'd get back to your tent having been on guard duty and out in the snow, and your opper would have cooked your food for you. Yeah, it was just made such a difference, you know. So I'm skiing along in the company snake one day, and all these messages are going back and forward. And the problem is, it's like Chinese whispers. You don't always understand what's being said. I'll give you an example of that. When I was in training, the message we got passed back to us one day as we were on patrol, on a night patrol, the message came back, "The cam cream's gone." And everyone's going, "What? What the fuck does it matter if the cam cream's... You've already put your cam cream on, right? It's got nothing to do with being out on a tactical patrol. You've done all that stuff before. The cam cream, right?" What it actually was, when we got through the Chinese whispers, was the gun group has left, right? Right? The gun group is left, got translated to there's no cam cream left. Got translated to the cam cream's gone, right? So it's hard to make sense of these messages, and sometimes the guy in front just tells you what he thinks he's heard, and that leaves you not being able to tell the guy behind because you ain't got to Scooby-Doo what he's just said. And of course, who's skiing behind me? John Wayne. And he's getting the umph with me because I can't pass the message because the guy in front of me doesn't know what the freaking message is. The guy in front's going, like, I didn't hear it. You know, the guy in front of him is maybe another 10 metres away. And you can see how this thing can break down, right? So this John Wayne character's like, "What did he fucking say?" And I turned around and said, "I don't know what he fucking said, or I'll tell you, right?" He went, you and he called me a name. So I thought, right, I just stuck my ski poles in the snow, turned around on my skis and walked back over and just laid into him. And I just started punching him, and he couldn't move because he was kind of planted in the snow. And then before we smashed the hell out of each other, somebody jumped in and split us apart. And this John Wayne's shouting, "I want him charged! I want him charged!" And I'm like, you know, it comes to something to just fucking want to physically attack someone, right? And not give a shit if you get put in prison for it. But it's like I'm saying, you get bullied, you've got to stick up for yourself, right? You've got to pick your right moment, and you've got to stick up for yourself, because it won't happen again. And this, you know, this guy, it's just like, I'd let it go up until this point. There've been a few jibes and all this, and I'd let it go, and then this was like, nah. And, oh, that was fun. Hey, don't condone violence, right? Actually, in that situation, I really do. So I put my boy in taekwondo, you know. You just don't want to get bullied in this life. I'm really lucky that I have that attitude, that I'm just going to fight you. So yeah, right, skiing at the weekend. This was fun. I'd only ever skied on a plastic slope, so I'd never had the joy of real snow. And of course, I've been on cross-country skis until now. So the first weekend, we got to go to Lillehammer, I think it was, to go skiing. I went in a ski shop. I got fitted out with their skis, boots and skis and poles. We went up on the lift. And I'll tell you what, I couldn't believe how easy it was compared to skiing on plastic. I felt like Franz Klammer. I'm doing all these wicked turns and glides and all kinds of stuff. It was utterly amazing. It was one of the best, one of the greatest feelings I've ever had in my life, was just getting on a pair of skis, going on snow, and just having such fun, not having to do that learning curve thing, because I'd already done the learning on the plastic, and it was so much easier. You felt like you were a really good skier. But it was quite funny. One time I was with my friend Ralph. Hello Ralph, if you're watching. Me and Ralph, we managed to fall off the lift. In fact, we didn't fall off it. The lift stopped. This is the chair lift, right? It stopped halfway up the mountain, and then it just stopped for like 20 minutes. And finally, I just looked at him and said, "Should we just jump off?" And we weren't that high. We were about 10 feet or something. And he's like, "Yeah." So we jumped off this lift. But then, of course, we're in the middle of the woods. And we just thought it was a simple case of getting across to the piste. Next thing you know, we're lost in the middle of these woods, not on cross-country skis, but on normal skis, trying to ski our way through the trees. Luckily, we did make it back, but yeah, that wouldn't have been good. Two Marines getting lost, right? So that's the weekend. There's also this other thing about Norway, and let's just say, before you go to Norway, you can buy your own skis. And a few of the lads do, not a lot, but a few who really love skiing at the weekend, they'll spend hundreds of pounds on these real Gucci ski equipment, right? And we had Tomo. Hello, Tomo, if you ever get to see this. Tomo was the PRI Marine, which is like the military shop. And he would come around your rooms, knocking on the door, trying to sell you the ski equipment. And at the end of like Norway, it's fuck off, Tomo. Everyone's telling this poor bloke to fuck off. No, we don't want your ski equipment. It was all in good, you know, it was all in good spirits and good humour. But what would happen is, you get, say, 5 lads on the bus going to the ski slope who got all their Gucci kit. So there's 5 sets of skis in the back. Then you spend a day at this civilian slope where all the civilians, the Norwegians, have got their, you know, really nice skis and poles. And always on the way back to the hotel, for some reason there was more skis in the back of that coach than went out. I think you get my drift. The other thing as well was, in Norway, they're so honest because they're all based around community. You know, these communities they live in the mountains, they've got all these unwritten laws. And one of the unwritten laws is you don't steal, because basically you're stealing from your neighbour, right? So in the shops, they had absolutely no security. So you'd get, let's say, a sports shop, with all this Gucci top of the range, hundreds of pounds worth of gear, because it's Norway, it's the Norwegian mountains. And then you'd get this old dear, 60 years old with her little square glasses on, sat behind a counter, honest as the day is long, wouldn't know how to steal something if you taught her. And she's got 30 Marines just come into her shop. So she just continues to, read her newspaper or whatever. What I'm trying to say is a few things probably went missing. And I'm not going to say that I didn't make something go missing at one point. I think it was a pair of sunglasses. I'm sorry, Norway. But let's face it, you are the richest country in the world. I'll make it up to you. So yeah, that was skiing at the weekend. The other thing as well is you'd have parties on a Saturday night back at your hotel, and they got fucking raucous. Men locked up on their own, having to make their own fun. You can do the maths, right? And you'd get this cheap Norwegian beer. You could buy a bottle of Norwegian beer for something stupid like 20p. And it just became chaos, right? There's a few things I'm not going to tell you because that's just in-house stuff. You don't need to. It's not a big secret, but it's stuff you probably wouldn't understand if you're a civilian. But there was one situation where one company the year before me had an army guy attached to them. Yeah, some of the other services, they didn't always come off too well when they were around us, Oh, one of these parties, one night I'm there. It's a fancy dress party. We call it silly rig, right? And in the Marines, there's this unwritten rule. You never buy fancy dress. You have to make it. And it's amazing what you can come up with out of all your equipment, or what you can buy in a second-hand shop, say, just to, supplement what you've got. For example, there's a pub in Plymouth once, and all the lads went out as the hunt. So there was the hunters, who obviously they didn't take horses. I don't know what the hunters wore, but they probably went and got cheap, chav, shitty jackets from the second-hand shop. And all the dogs were wearing their Arctic white thermals with big brown patches painted all over them, and their hat, the deputy dog hat that I told you. And they arrived at one bar. I can actually remember the bar where it was. It used to be in the corner of one of the streets in Plymouth. Not that that means anything to if you don't know what I'm talking about. But anyway, they arrived at the door, and the doorman went, "Sorry, fellas, I can't let you in." So you've got a troop of 30 blokes. 29 are dressed up as hounds. 28 dressed up as hounds. One is dressed up as the huntsman with his bugle. And the rest are... And the final guy is dressed as the fox. And the huntsman says to the guy on the door, he says, "Mate, if I blow this horn, I'll promise you, we're coming in." And the doorman's like, "Yeah, all right, fair enough. Come in, fellas, but behave, will you?" So, yes. Where are we now? So we're having this sod's opera. That's another thing they do. I'll talk about that after. But we're having this silly rig night. And I just put on... I had like these Hawaii shorts, board shorts. And I just put on them and a surfing t-shirt and flip-flops. And I was going as a surfer, right? And I made a surfboard. It was something like that. But at least I went to the effort of making the surfboard. Well, we had this guy, I'm going to call him Roderick. Don't want to give his name away. That wouldn't be fair. But he was a bit of a strange one. I just mean he didn't fit in. And on our final exercise, he actually stole my windproof jacket. So he didn't do himself any favours with me. I didn't give him shit for it. I just said, can I have my jacket back, please? He went, oh, all right, yeah. But anyway, he's turned up at this fancy dress party and he's wearing a green military t-shirt, a towel wrapped around him, so his bath towel, and I think he had flip-flops. So basically he made no effort at all. And one of the lads said to him, Rodders, what have you come as? And he went, bit of beachwear. Bit of beachwear. You'll either understand how Chad that is. Maybe it's just a Marines thing. But bit of beachwear. Right. Moving swiftly on. I won't talk about the Sods Opera, but they are funny. That is one of the funniest things I saw in the military. It's when the lads put on theatre. It's fucking hilarious. And it's on a drinks night, and everybody comes. The company commander, all the troop commanders, everybody comes, and they put on this theatre, and it's just hilarious. I'm going to talk about that in a separate video. But we had this theatre night, and this guy John Wayne is going round. He's going around the accommodation and he's saying things like, right, theatre night tonight, or what it might have been the Sods Opera night. He says, these young lads, they're going to wish they never joined up, right? This is what he's going around saying. So you're there, you're like 19 years old, you know, weigh as much as a bloody wet paper hanky, and you've got these big fucking guys walking around saying how much they're going to make your life miserable tonight. Well, one of the tricks that they would play is they would do the great Superendo, right? So they'd get someone from the audience, one of the young lads, one of the new lads. They'd get him on stage and they'd put his arm in the air and say, this is the great Superendo. The great Superendo is now going to do an amazing act of magic. He is going to escape from this kit bag. And they put this poor guy in a kit bag with his head first. And then they tie the string on the kit bag around his legs. Tight, obviously. Well, his arms are in a kit bag, so he can't reach the string anyway. And then they lie him on the edge of the stage. And of course, guess where he stays all night long then? He's there. And his little feet are wiggling like this. I remember the lad, I can't remember his name, the lad they did it to, but he had his desert boots on, his desert wellies, and they were just wiggling all night long. And every half hour or so, the compere of our theatre would come out and he'd go, and now I give you the great Superendo. Oh, no, he hasn't escaped yet. And I was that, because I'd heard about this trick, I was that like certain it wasn't going to be me, that I took my Normark, that's your knife, that you buy these knives called Normark knives, right? I took my Normark knife in my pocket, in the pocket of my jeans. So if that was going to be me, I was just going to cut the bag to get out of there. But right, just going to talk about final exercise and endex. So final exercise was wicked. The choppers fly in and they pick you up from near the hotel. So you all go out, you've all got your skis, you bundle, you strap your skis and your poles together. You've got your bergen on one shoulder. You're all crouched down in what they call a stick. The choppers come in, the load master waves you on, and then you run out to the chopper, keeping your head down like you see in the films, right? Chuck your bergen on board. The loadmaster just chucks it to the back. You clamber in and take a seat. Put your seatbelt on. When the Sea King's full, it's just off and it's gone, and it's all so quick. It's really exciting, really good fun, and by fuck, do you feel like a commando? You know, you really feel this is the job I joined up for. The pilot, because it's all a tactical exercise, some of the safety can sort of go out the window, and he's allowed to fly down these Norwegian valleys like this, side to side, and it's just, you're there with, you know, with your weapon across your chest. It's just, yeah, just an amazing experience. And for that one, they dropped us on top of a mountain. So we're on top of a snowy mountain. They chucked the bergens out. The bergens promptly disappeared because it was 4 feet deep in powder snow. You jumped out after, and then your whole troop jumped out on top of this mountain, and you're all just up to there in snow then. Then you had to not just retrieve your bergen, which is sunk down in the snow, but you've got to get into your skis. And it took quite some doing. It took about half an hour to flatten enough snow to get your skis on the snow, to get your feet in the skis, to strap them into the bindings, then get your rucksack on. But when we did, we all skied down this mountain as a troop. Might have even been a company, I don't remember. And it was amazing. It's one of my best memories of being in the Marines, being in Norway, was we all just skied anywhere. You didn't ski in a snake or anything, you just bombed it down this mountain, and it was such a gentle gradient that you could never get too fast, but because of the powder, it just kept you nice and slow. And everyone's obviously got their bergens on, weapons across your chest, skis under your arms, and you're just bombing down this mountain, the whole troop. Really, really was good fun. That's when we went into this unit harbour area. So we'd only been in the nature for 1 day, and we'd skied about probably 15 miles. The next day we got our skis on and we skied into a harbour area that was it was like a unit area that had been set up, and each company could ski in one at a time and take over all these tents that have been put up. And in the tents they had camp beds. It might not sound a lot, but compared to sleeping, you know, on the snow, well, obviously on a roll mat, but it was just amazing. And they were cooking food. I don't know if they went as far as cooking food for us, but you got like a few snacks brought around, and you got the Norwegian equivalent of Coca-Cola given to you. It was amazing, and we spent, I think, 2 days there, and you could just have a proper wash and everything. So what I'm trying to say is this is a 12-day exercise that you have not been looking forward to, because 12 days in the Norwegian Arctic, in the wilderness basically, it's cold, tired, and you just wish you were at home having a nice cup of tea in front of the telly. Well, I did. And so immediately we had 2 days in this tent. Then we went back out into the field, skied for another half day, put our tents up, and I'm just waiting for them to shout "pull pole," which means we've got to go. Then you've got this rigmarole of putting your tent up, which takes about an hour in the cold to get your tent up and get it all nice. Then it takes about another hour to shovel snow into a snow wall, because the tent you can see through, the fire shines through them, so you have to build snow walls around them, at least to the side that faces, you know, away from the mountain. It takes ages to get the tent up. Then you get on guard duty, so you stood in the snow for 1 hour or maybe even 2 hours, freezing, stamping your feet up and down to keep warm. Then you get in, sometimes you just get your cooker on, you're just starting to have a bite to eat, and then it's pull pole, so you haven't even had any sleep. You've got to ski on again through the night, and it can be quite exhausting. So here we are on our final exercise, and we haven't had any of that stuff. Yeah, we've done a bit of skiing. Yeah, we've stayed in the tent, but we've had 2 nights in a proper position. This harbour area we're skiing in now as a troop, I'm waiting for them to shout pull pole, and it doesn't come. And it didn't come for 1 day, which was just unheard of. It didn't come for 2 days. It didn't come for 3 days. So for 3 days, we had the sheer luxury of just lying in your sleeping bag. That's it. You don't go out the tent, there's nowhere to go. Plus it's all tactical, so you can't go walking around. Just laying in the tent. The guard duty, sentry duty, was like 1 hour in maybe 8 or something, which is nothing. You don't mind doing that. It meant 1 hour standing outside, 7 hours in your sleeping bag, or eating food. It was just brilliant. And you'd think you might run out of stuff to say to your oppos, but you don't. You're just constantly talking shit, chatting everything that comes in, into your head. And then we sat on our bergen. We went out doing the company snake thing, packed up all the tent. We sat on our bergen. They said 5-minute smoke break. And then lo and behold, we were still sat there 12 hours later. And here's the thing. In that 12 hours, a Norwegian tank, came driving down the road. Well, the Norwegians play your enemy. So we have one of our overexcited troop commanders jumps up. He's like, tank! And he skis over to the road, points his SA-80, his rifle, at this tank, and he starts blatting rounds. The rest of us are just going, what are you doing? And he turns around and sees that everyone's just looking at him and laughing. He's trying to shoot a tank with a 5.56mm, light automatic weapon. And he's like, come on, fellas, fucking hell, shoot it. Well, he's a corporal, so you've got to kind of go, all right. All that means is then you've got to go to the hassle of cleaning all your weapon. No, we didn't kill the tank, and you're certainly not going to kill a tank with blank rounds. So we continue sitting on our backpacks, and we're just making up games. It's so cold, you're getting chilled to the core now, and you're stamping your feet to keep warm, and you're smoking just to have something to do. And we're making up these games to play just to pass the time. The 5-minute smoke break turned into like 12 hours or something. From 7 in the morning till 7 at night. We're just stuck there. And then finally, we get a word that the choppers are coming. By this time, we'd started putting our tents up. And it was pull pole. So we didn't even get the tents up. We had to take them back down again. And lo and behold, what can you hear? You can hear the choppers coming. So everyone lines out in their sticks. The choppers come in. We went on board the choppers. And it's like, we're going on the aircraft carrier. That was the buzz we got. The choppers are going to come and take you out to HMS Invincible. Well, you don't believe it because you can't believe anything you hear in the military. It's normally a load of shit, right? No, these choppers came in, took us on board and flew us out to the ship. So we've just gone from being freezing cold for 12 hours, bored, with nothing to do and not knowing what the hell's happening. They flew us on board ship and we stayed on ship for 3 days. So this 12-day exercise is already like nearing its end, and we haven't really done anything particularly grueling or arduous or cold other than the 12 hours sitting on your bergen. So you get off on the upper deck of Invincible. You go over to a lift. Your troop crouches down on the lift, and the lift comes down and it brings you into the bowels of Invincible. Brings you to what we called it the tank deck. I believe we called it the tank deck. So you're on this ship, and you've got your beds again, your cots. These put you up beds, which is just you can't explain the sheer luxury of it. And it wasn't until I went through my photographs that I realised we were wearing stone shirts on this ship. That's our best shirt. So somehow we must have packed our gear so it got loaded onto the ship before us. I've got no idea how that happened. I honestly am not sure how we packed a bag and it got loaded onto the aircraft carrier, because I wasn't even sure that we were going onto it. Anyway, I digress. So immediately you're on this ship and you can go to the naffy and you can buy food. You know, not ration pack food, normal snacks. You can buy beer. It's really weird. I didn't really drink a lot back then. Now I reckon beer, or maybe not now, but in the past sort of 30 years, beer would have been the first thing I went for before everything else. But I was only 19 back then. I wasn't such an alkie, you know. So yeah, so we're on HMS Invincible. The next thing you know, we're all sat on our beds that night and we're watching a movie, a film. Dave, bless him. Dave committed suicide, folks. Gassed himself in his car. I got on well with Dave. He used to get a lot of shit. He was actually a corporal, but he used to get shit from everyone. He was a bit different, but I don't think anyone should get bullied, right? But I don't think you should even get bullied because you're different, because who the fuck wants to be the same, you know? But he used to get a lot of flack, and I don't know if that had something to do with it, but he was my roommate, my oppo, in Northern Ireland. So in the Northern Ireland conflict, me and him, just the two of us, shared a room. We got on perfectly well. He was a nice bloke, you know. But he came back after that, Norway. His missus left him because she hadn't seen him she saw him for like 3 months a year, and they hadn't long been married. And yeah, he went up and gassed himself. But he'd gone, I don't know how he managed to do it, but he'd gone and got a projector from the Navy, and he showed us a film. So we were watching like freaking Jaws or something. And I'll never forget, because we're on the tank deck and it's no smoking, obviously. Ordinarily all the planes are kept there, and tanks, obviously. So there's a lot of fuel sloshing about. So you certainly don't smoke around aviation fuel. And I remember looking at the top of this shake-on. A shake-on's a container. And there was Dave up there, shirt off, just smoking away next to the projector as he's running this film. And then, of course, it got to the bit where the film split, like they did in the old days when the film went round and round. And it split. And everyone just turned around, Dave! And giving him loads of shit. And they're just fucking throwing anything they can pick up, they're throwing it at Dave, right? That was all in good taste, I should add. But yeah, so it was quite an experience to suddenly be on ship. And whilst on ship, two things happened. One, I saw my first resupply at sea. That's where an RFA, a Royal Fleet Auxiliary ship, comes alongside you. They fire a gun across, and it fires a string. It's an SLR. It's got an attachment on top. It's got like, I think they call it the dolly, I'm not sure, but it's got like this attachment you put on. I think you put a blank in. It's not a real round. I think the blank gives it enough welly to fire over to the other ship. Then they pull the string. It's got a bigger rope on it. They pulled a bigger rope. It's got a cable attached to it. Then they attach the cable and they link up this cross-decking system to resupply the ship with fuel and anything else it needs, right? So I saw that while I was on there. That was quite interesting. And also, I saw these lads, Marines, walking around with pistols, like, around their waist. Which was strange, because I'm thinking, are these guys like SBS or something? They're clearly some sort of special force or some sort of security force, but they're not like with the units. Of course, it turns out they're ship's Marines, which I didn't really know about until then, that every ship in the Navy has a few Marines on board. either for security or just in case the ship runs into problems when it's abroad. It's got a few armed Marines on board, right? And lo and behold, these guys are on board to protect the top secret weapon systems. And lo and behold, little did I know that would be my next job, right? So probably I'm digressing a bit, but I just thought that was interesting. So yeah, and an interesting thing happened. We're in Norway. The ship ran aground. So there we are, and sailing up one of the fjords or wherever we might be. The captain commits the cardinal sin. He's not checked his charts properly or his tide tables, and he ran the ship aground. He ran it onto rocks. And then it's a case of stop, don't do anything. Send the ship's divers down to find out what damage has been done. Well, lo and behold, as these ship's divers are all getting kitted up, and if you're a Marine on ship, you can ask to do that diving course. Pinhead did it, and I think Pinhead's best mate did it too. I think 4 or 5 of our lads did that course. It's not an easy course, it's quite physical. But our commanding officer sees these guys getting kitted up, and he turns to his 2IC, second in command, and he said, I think his name was Gordon. He said, Gordon, do you think they'll let me go down? I've got my hours in, right? What he's saying is he's ex-SBS, right? Special Boat Service. He's got all his hours up to date. This guy's hard as nails, like all those guys are. And rather than like relax on his camp bed or he's got a cabin, relax in there and, have a drink and chill out and take it easy. No, he wants to go down into the freezing cold North Atlantic. Yeah, you get some nutcases in the military, I tell you. Some of them even run 1,000 miles pretty much non-stop. So, yeah, I'll bring this to an end now. So, went back out into the field and I'm skiing along one day and they gave me the Carl Gustav, the 84mm, is it? It's a rocket launcher. It's an anti-tank weapon. My God, I tell you what, that weighed you down a bit. Especially, again, if you're as small as me, that was quite a big thing to suddenly put on top of your bergen and have to ski along with. And so there I am skiing along, and we were skiing for an objective, but nobody quite really knew what it was. But we were coming towards civilization. And then suddenly a shout goes up, and it's a shout you've kind of all, unless you're a psycho and you enjoy this shit, it's a shout everyone's been waiting for. End X! And everyone just goes like this. And this message just gets passed back to everyone. End X. It's the end of the exercise. And what does that mean? It means you're going home, not back to the hotel. You've packed all your kit. It's all been loaded onto a ferry, a civilian ferry, like like one of these ferries that probably takes people up and down the Norwegian fjords, right? But the military paid for it, all of it, and they put the whole unit on board, and it sailed all the way from Norway back to Plymouth. I tell you, on that coach to the ferry, everybody is asleep. Lying on kit bags, lying on their weapons, lying on just everyone is asleep. You're all so exhausted. And on the ferry, it was just sheer luxury. It was absolutely like the calm after the storm. From that day onwards, I've always loved being on a ferry. It gives me that feeling of it's over and I can just relax. But of course, on that ferry, it's a Norwegian ferry. It's manned by very pretty Norwegian girls, right? I mean, all the hostesses, all the staff are these gorgeous Norwegian and Swedish girls. And they're all so beautiful and dainty, and They got really big knuckles, if you know what I mean. And it was quite an eye-opener. Well, you put those girls who've got a reputation for being quite open about sex, can we say? I'm not going to say they're nymphomaniacs, that would be rude, but they're very open in Scandinavia about sex when you're a Brit anyway. And you put those girls on a ship full of Marines that have been out in the snow for 3 months, I think you can guess what happened. But I just close with a funny story. My mate Dan, the guy that left the weapon, on the way back, we were all tasked to do lectures. We all had to give a lecture. It was just a way of passing the time and improving our military skills. And in the military, there's a certain way you give a lecture. For example, you always stand at a lectern. Not that I think they had one on ship, but you stand at the lectern, you hold the lectern, you don't move your hands, because that would be a distraction. You point out your aim of your lecture, what you're going to do during the lecture, and how you're going to conclude. It's something really fixed like this. You don't have distractions in the room. When you come to the end of a slide, you have a blank. Because if you leave the slide up there, people's mind is thinking about the slide, right? It's this very set way of doing it, and it's quite professional. So Dan decides for his lecture, he's going to teach people how to make cupcakes, right? It's a bit of a joke. Your lectures can be quite humorous, quite funny. One guy did one on 9/11 once, and I think he's quite surprised everyone with what he knew about what really happened 9/11. You know, not what we were all told it was way back then, right? And so Dan puts together this lecture about making cupcakes. And he's making a complete mess of it. He's doing the lecture very well, but he's mixing the ingredients and he's purposely throwing it everywhere and putting the wrong amounts in. And then bringing he brings his lecture to an end. And he says, fellas, you know, I hope you've got something from this. And he said, and just to finish, here's one I made earlier. And he's got one of these Scandinavian girls, one of these hostesses, waitresses or whatever they're doing on this ship. And she comes walking in, you know, looking all gorgeous. And she's carrying this proper cake with all candles on it and everything that the chefs obviously cooked specially for this lecture. It's not this little crappy cupcake. And yeah, I think that went down well. So thank you for listening, friends. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe. I just want to finish by saying Norway was really hard at the time. I didn't really enjoy being in the field. I used to stand freezing on guard duty, looking at the little lights on the hillside. And those little lights were ski chalets that are owned by Norwegians. They have their little cabins that they go to at weekend, right? And I'm just stood there in the Norwegian Arctic, freezing, looking at these cabins thinking, they're in there now, having a nice meal, making a cup of coffee from a real kettle, not boiling it in a mess tin, you know, on a stove that stinks and gasses all your mates out. And I honestly look forward to the day I got back to England. And it's a real shame because now I've spent probably about 4 years of my life in Norway. I love cross-country skiing. I know how to manage the cold, obviously a lot better as an adult, as a man. And yeah, I'd love to go back and do a Norway even at this age. I wouldn't say no to that opportunity now. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Any questions, put them below. Please consider subscribing to my Patreon. It's just £2 a month. It helps me do these videos, and in return I give you free life coaching. Explain, for example, how I ran, like I said, 1,000 miles non-stop, bar sleeping on the side of the road. For charity, obviously. I'm not just completely mad. And please like and subscribe. Respect. Hello friend, I hope this finds you well. My name's Thrall. I'm a former Royal Marines Commando and I fought my way back from chronic trauma and addiction to live, work and travel in 80 countries across all 7 continents, achieving all of my dreams and goals along the way. Now I pass my simple system on to other people, but I can only help you if you like and subscribe. So please do so, because you get one life, and if you live it right, one is enough.